Regardless of how dark our days are, with all of our problems that we might have, Christian can always rejoice. Rejoice always, Paul said, even from a dungeon. Rejoice. And we can do that as we just sung the song, there's sunshine in our soul today, not because the physical sun, and that's a wonderful thing, but because the sunlight of God's Word has been shed in our hearts, and we're able to know how God would have us to live. Many of us have directed our paths according to following Jesus Christ. Difficult road sometimes, but it's a rewarding one because we know, as we've been singing, we can think about the hope of heaven that transcends all of our problems, that transcends all of our circumstances, transcends everything that could ever happen in your life, whether good or bad. All this is going to be transitory. We're marching on to the glory land. And I hope that we can keep being joyous pilgrims as we think about God's Word and get that into our heart, that we can deal with the shadows and the clouds that come into our life from time to time. And that's what we're going to be speaking about this morning, to be looking at our life and in this society. We talk about a society, and we have social media. It's not just a media, it's social society where we're engaged with so many people as are supposed to be our friends, but we can get involved in being connected with people all over the world. And a lot of times the Bible will warn us, evil companionships corrupt good morals. But at the same time, as we'll see this morning, we're to be light as well as salt. We're not to let corruption have an inroad into our lives. And in the corner that we find ourselves in, we need to be light and salt. That's dealing with our society around us. And so my question is, what to do when society has corrupted itself? You'll see people saying hateful things in social media, people telling lies, people bullying other people. We've seen that in our lives where young people are having to deal with that. Words hurt. And there's a sense of we're in a society, but a society that has really corrupted itself. And the world has always been dark. The world has always been evil. We're not saying this is something new, but we see it from time to time as we just kind of look at it and realize it's corrupt, all right. There's no doubt about that. I see that now. You and I can see it real quickly with media and the social media. We have it at our fingertips on our phone. And we ask ourselves, what should a Christian do? What should be our attitude when we think about it? Should we be despondent? It has all gone to the dogs. There's no more hope. There's no hope for this country. There's no hope for any people around. I'm just going to live my life and be despondent. When we think about the world before the flood, was God finished with humanity in Noah's day? He was pretty corrupt. Yet here you had a man that was righteous as he walked with God. He was blameless or perfect, complete in his generation. But it was wicked. The thoughts of people's heart was dark and sinful. There was great violence. And we can see, how does violence come in here when people are just sinning against God? It's because they've left God out of their knowledge. They're the ones in control. And if you cross me, I will take you down. I will rob from you. I'll steal from you. I will cancel you because I have the power to do so. And there's violence that hits the world. And we're living in a time where we're debating, we're going to defund the police. We want a new type of police order. And we don't want any police. With all the violence around us, it's crazy, isn't it? But that's what happens when people leave God. My question is, would God finish with humanity when He brought the flood, chapter 6 through 9? No, we know there was hope on the other side. There was God going through Noah, the righteous man, his family. We're going to start again. Now, we're promised that this world will not be just overflow with water. but it will be burned with fire as we bring the end of time there. There'll be a time when time will be no more. We'll be ushered into eternity. But my question is, it can look bad, and it could be bad before God. But there's no future. There's no hope for humanity at all. Can we learn lessons that even while this particular society I'm living in is going to be destroyed, if I'm living in Noah's day, could he be righteous before God? Was it impossible? Or was evil companionships corrupt good morals and Noah, you're sunk? Because their heart's bad. Their actions are bad. No, you can live a righteous life. And your family could be righteous. And you can walk with God. And that is a wonderful thing that you and I can do. We can walk with God as we live in a corrupt society. But we're living in a difficult time. What to do in a corrupted society? We want to be a blessing to people around us. God spares when righteousness is seen. There was a area of the world, Sodom, Gomorrah, those cities of the plain, that God had promised because of their ungodliness, he's not going to wipe out the world, but he's going to deal with Sodom. Sodom and Gomorrah would be destroyed. Lot was there, Abraham's nephew, and Abraham asked God, Genesis 18:22-33. He's very careful about asking God. I'm just flesh. I don't want you to be angry, God. But if there's 50 people that are righteous, will you spare them? Shall the God of this world, he's so just, shall he be just? Is it just God to condemn the few righteous along with the wicked? If there's 50, 45, 30, 20, oh God, don't be angry, 10. Will you save it? And what did God do? I'll be merciful, 10. But he couldn't find that. Look what we see in Jonah, the 3rd chapter, verse 4. 40 days, Jonah's there. You're going to be destroyed. God is bringing a judgment upon you. You got 40 days. But they changed their hearts from the top to the bottom, the king and all the people. And God, in verse 10, repented of the evil that he was going to do to them. That means he changed his mind. He didn't sin. He didn't have sin that he had to repent of like you and I do. But there was a change of mind, like we're supposed to turn from our ways. He turned from what he had promised to do, that he would indeed do. He is that type of a God where he spares people when there is indeed righteousness seen. And we need to understand that today. Righteousness exalteth a nation, Proverbs 14:34. But sin is a reproach just to Israel. No. It's just a reproach to Judah. No. It's a reproach to any people. Our God is big enough to control the world. He created it. He sees it. He hasn't left it alone. He watches it. He sees when the nations don't honor him. But sin, transgressing his law, is a reproach to any people on the face of this earth. Here we are on the face of this earth. We are a people. And what I need to do as an individual, I can start in my corner. You know, sometimes we have big projects. I'm going to clean out this whole garage. And it's been a while. I'm going to clean it out today. And then you start looking at it. I'll do that tomorrow. Have you been there? But one day you get real smart. Say, you know, I'll just clean out that little corner there. And you're real proud of yourself. When all that dirt underneath there, you swept out and you hung things up. You got a corner done. You feel pretty good. And it's how you eat an elephant, a little bit at a time. And we just got to get started. Well, I cannot be a blessing to the whole world. The whole world doesn't know you and me. But there's some people that do. There's some people in your corner of influence. And you can make sure you will be a blessing, that when they look at you, they'll see something positive and they'll see a blessing in their life. And when they listen to positive preachers who tell you that you need to hang around successful people in order to be successful, that they'll rub off on you. We also know the corrupt world can wear off on us as well. We've got to be careful. But we can be a blessing to those who just heard a sermon that you need to be hanging around people that are uplifting and gracious, and here's your words, and here you are a blessing. It's pure words, pure living, edifying relationships. You can be a blessing to the people you come in contact with. And that's what you and I can do. When you go to McDonald's and hear 8-year-olds cussing and cursing, filthy language. When you see so much darkness around the world, so much corruption and so violence, there's a place that people can come in contact, and it's you. And you can indeed be a blessing, because I'm going to live a righteous life. And that will exalt a nation if everybody were that way. But I'm going to be a part of that. I'm going to be a blessing, even in a dark society. Gibbon, as he wrote about the history of the falling of Rome, you can learn lessons from history. Rome became corrupt from within. And it was a corrupt society where the church was being established. And Gibbon says the church's impact on the Roman society was great. Now, one of them, supernatural gifts. See, the early church did not have the completed word, but they had miraculous gifts, which indeed were powers that transcended the power of any man, but they were signs. They signified, here is one with the authority of God upon them. But the nature of those supernatural gifts was confirmed, a word that you and I have already been confirmed now. And it was telling you how they were to live. That here were things that we put into practice in our lives coming from people who had supernatural gifts. That got their attention. Had an effect upon them. That here was a church, and look at these things they have. But look what they're saying. And it wasn't philosophy. It wasn't Plato. It wasn't Socrates. It wasn't Greek wisdom. They're saying it's a revelation. God has revealed His mind. And then in the first century, their gifts were confirming that. Government was corrupt. And they saw that here is character and the purity of the government that governed the church was something that was impressive. The leadership had a good influence from those that are without when you looked at the church. But it had a positive effect upon them. And what they did, the members of that church, they demonstrated in their lives, they demonstrated their faith that they walked by. They demonstrated by virtues. Things that a society are just excellent, like telling the truth, being a faithful husband and wife, obedient children, not because they have to, it's because they want to. They've been disciplined out of love. All the things that you and I as Christians understand about when we think about the Word of God and live it out, that indeed this is virtuous. Indeed it is excellent. And that's what these people saw. And it had an impact upon the Roman government. Maybe those in power, they observed. But the people who lived with them, it had a positive influence and opened the door if they wanted to walk into that door of being saved themselves. There's a great comparison between ancient Rome and modern America. And we could be talking about modern America in the 20th century, and this has been true. We're in the 21st century. Has it gotten any worse? Does it go back and forth? We're living in pretty dark times. But get a picture of what historians have said about Rome. J.J. Chapson says that Lucian lived first half of the 2nd century in an age when shame seems to have vanished from the earth. Think about it. Does that seem to have vanished from our earth? I mean, we've seen political world where you can lie about a candidate and you don't have any shame. We won, didn't we? That's all that matters. End justifies the means. They don't mind lying. They don't mind being caught in a lie. So what? There's no shame of lying in society. Here we are, teaching our children, don't you lie to me. Now, you may get a whipping for a lot of things, but you lie, it's going to be worse. We said lying is horrible. Well, the world doesn't think that. Sometimes you've got to lie to get along. Who said that? That's our society. That's where we are. Shame. There was a time when you couldn't be president if you were divorced. There's no shame in divorcing. And those things that once were there, not even being married to one another. We see the homosexuality that's around. And there was no sense of that. That's no big deal because we've been going down that cycle a long time. Things get where people just don't feel the shame anymore. There's no shame of nakedness and how people dress themselves. I remember going to Lithuania in the early 90s. Indeed, there was the idea of nakedness was not a big deal. You think, well, Europe's going to be full of that. Not where I was. But when the Iron Curtain was open and we were able to go in, it just took 2 years when I went back. And nudity was everywhere. And they woke themselves up. That's the Western society as far as they were concerned. They were taking on our ways. And it became more and more corrupt with no shame. There's not that. Does that sound like America? That's ancient Rome. That's the world that people lived in. Ivy lived into the 1st century, early part of the 1st century. He says, I see proud Rome perishing, the victim of her own prosperity. He's living in that 1st century. Rome's in power. I see Rome perishing, and all they are is a victim of what? Prosperity. We're a prosperous people in America. We've been that way for a long time. You and I are blessed. We prayed about that this morning. It is so true. You compare us with the world, we're very rich. Even us middle class or lower class folks. We're very rich. But prosperity ruins people. It ruined Rome. And we have everything we want. We get worldly minded. We get materialistic minded. I want this, I want that. And we realize that we've got to have those things. And all of what prosperity brings, it brings a lot of baggage that's not good for a people. But even back then, he was seeing that. I don't think he was a poor man being mad at people. He was a historian. But he was seeing you're a victim from your own prosperity because they don't know how to handle riches. Seneca was a writer, historian. He said Roman women were married to be divorced and were divorced to be married. We mentioned no shame in divorce. And realize that indeed sometimes you have a right to put away a mate for fornication. And there's no shame in that. But it's a sad time when our relationships break like that. But God doesn't tolerate that in a relationship. He doesn't expect us to do that. But here was just divorce so rampant. It was so prolific around people. They said the women were just married because they're going to get a divorce and divorced to be married. And we see Hollywood, I'm on my 8th husband, I'm on my 9th wife. No shame in all of that. Nothing that would be out of order with that. We realize God doesn't want it that way. From the very beginning, One man, one woman for life. But that's not here, is it? And divorce rates sometimes are going down because people are just not getting married. So they're not going to be divorced. They just live a while with someone and then move on to someone else. Isn't that modern America in a lot of places? That's what was happening in Rome. Tacitus, another historian, the greater the infamy, the wilder the delight. Now, that's been a problem with youth for a long time. Proverbs 1, read that first chapter, and you'll realize that here was gang activity where a father is telling his son, don't you go off with that crowd. You know what they're doing? They're killing people, and they say, yeah, we're taking them alive to Sheol. It's kind of exciting to kill somebody just that quickly. Bringing them alive to Sheol, the realm of the dead. Young people get caught up with things that are wild and therefore more delightful. What crazy things can I do today? And the greater the infamy, I want to be a serial killer. Because they're on television all the time, wherever our mind leads. But young people get caught up in that, and people get caught up in that. The greater the infamy, the wilder the delight. Our senses, something different, something strange, something that's just not normal. And we participate in that in our society. And that's the way it was in Rome in the first 2 centuries that we're looking at. We also notice at a Plato symposium in his work, Phaedrus, he spoke about homosexual love. I know not any greater blessing to a young man. And that's who Phaedrus was. The name denotes a delight of youth. I know of not any greater blessing to a young man who is beginning life than a virtuous lover, or to the lover than a beloved boy. Pedophiles? You thought that was new? No. And you have groups that advocate that very same thing. Loving boys. Homosexual love. It's nothing new under the sun. But Rome and the ancient world around them, they've been practiced that a long time. How prevalent was it? Gibbon says, of the first 15 emperors, Claudius was the only one whose taste in love was entirely correct. He had a love for a woman, hopefully his wife. But the first 15 emperors practiced homosexuality. Have we gotten that dark yet with our leaders? Homosexuals are in the cabinet of our leadership. But we may not have gotten that dark yet, but if it does, it's nothing new, is it? And you think, well, ancient Rome, all their power, and we see that in the first century, about here's the 5th century, the 400s, they're completely overcome. And they're not the nation, they haven't come back. It's a nation either. It is indeed corrupting that brings people down inside out, not an outside military force. They sometimes may just pick over the carcass, but it's been corrupted for a long time before it goes down. Question again, what do I do in a corrupted society? I want to look at a few things with you, and the lesson will be yours. Number 1, I'm going to be salt and I'm going to be light. I am the salt of the earth. That's what you and I are as followers of Christ. Salt kind of keeps the corruption from spreading. Yeah, you can make that filthy joke, but we're not going to pass it on. I'm going to try to stop you from doing it. Don't talk to me that way anymore. I don't want to hear that type of language. We can stop the corruption. But we're also to be lights in the world. He says a city set on a hill cannot be hid. You can't hide a city that's up here, open and visible for all. And you can't hide yourself that way. You've got to be in this world, and you're going to be observed by this world. And being lights of the world, they may see your what? Good works. There's your virtual living that said is indeed a blessing to people. You will be virtuous living and being the salt and the light of how we're to live. And they'll see your good works and they'll glorify the one who started it all. God, not you. God. But glorify your Father who is in heaven. So I'm light, but I'm salt. If the salt has lost its savor, it's good for nothing. Trample under the feet of men. So we're there. Being pungent, bringing forth taste to what virtuous living can be about. We do it with grace, and we do it with a positive attitude, and there's sunshine in my heart today, even though I'm living in a dark, dark world. I'm not going to let it bring it down. I'm going to brighten the corner where I am, and that corner is going to be clean with living holy lives to the glory of God. God, as we're passing through this life, wanted us to make an impact. If you turn with me to 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter, verses 11 and 12, we see that combination that is fair for the Christian. And we're to be pilgrims. We're to understand, I beseech you as sojourners and pilgrims. I'm passing through, this land does not belong to me. I'm a sojourner and I'm a pilgrim. I'm not a citizen yet. And our citizenship is in heaven. I will never be a citizen in that sense that this is where my home is. Now, I may live in a country and I'll be a good citizen. But ultimately, my citizenship is in heaven. And because of that, I'm a good citizen here. But notice what he says. You are a pilgrim and sojourners, so you don't care? I do. I'm going to abstain from fleshly lusts. They war against the soul. There's a battle. We talk about the first great world war. It's the Garden of Eden, where the lust of the flesh was so strong that they disobeyed God. World War I, as far as I'm concerned. That is a worldwide problem. And we still have it. It is a war of our soul. No, that's just something that's titillating. I think I'll try that. I'm not going to get involved with that. I'll just try that a little bit. You know, it's not all that bad that we do that. Our language, our dress, and all those things. No, there's a war going on. And it wars against our soul. And he says this, having your behavior seemly among the Gentiles, that wherein they speak against you as evildoers. That's enough. They don't like Christians. And we're just going to go in a hole? No. They'll speak to you as evildoers. They will claim that you are, but they keep on seeing that light, and they keep on seeing that salt being applied to a corrupt world around them. And they will see your good works, which they behold. They'll glorify God in the day of visitation. Could it be the day of visitation when he brings the gospel to their purview? Could be. Could it be the visitation that he's going to bring in judgment and destroy the world, and they're going to be thankful that they saw a Christian and they obeyed the gospel before God visited them with wrath, and now he visits us with the joys of heaven? Could be. Regardless, we're going to shine, and we're going to be salt, and we're going to have potentially then an influence for good in the people round about us. That's a big job. Salt, light, salt. But you live a righteous life, you'll be that. And you take it seriously, you'll be that. Yeah, I'm walking through this life, and this is not my home. My permanent home is heaven. But I am going to be a blessing to a dark society because I'm a Christian. Hit on a little bit, we'll live virtuous lives. What does the word virtue mean? Or to add to our faith virtue. The very thing that we start with faith, we're adding virtue and knowledge and so forth. We get a picture of that in 1 Peter 2 and verse 9. We get it in 2 Peter 1:5. But 1 Peter 2 and verse 9, we're to show forth the excellencies or the virtue of him who called us out of darkness into his marvelous light. Sometimes we limit virtue. That's courage, and it is. In fact, it is something excellent for a soldier to have, is courage. And we are soldiers of Christ. So I'm not putting that down, but it's broader than that. It encompasses things that are excellent. God is excellent in all of His dealings with us. And we're to show forth the excellencies of His divine nature. We're not divine, but He's holy. And there's so many aspects of all manner of holy living and godliness Peter will talk about in our lives. That is excellent. I am to have a discerning love that I may approve the things that are excellent. In Philippians, the 1st chapter. That keeps us being light. That keeps us being salt. And I tell you, you can't live a better life than being excellent. Try it. Not good, excellent. Highest that you could ever be in life. And we may achieve a lot of great things in life. And that's so wonderful about living and having freedoms. We can pursue our dreams. But don't you ever forget to dream that I want to live a profitable life for you, oh God. And living a life that is going to strive for excellence in my character and all facets of my living. I can do that in a corrupted society. It's getting darker, I can get lighter and shine brighter because I am living a virtuous life. Number 3, I want to manifest honor. I want to uphold honor that still exists in the society that I'm living in. Paul lived in Rome, in that society. And yet he said that we are to think of things honorable in the sight of all men. Well, it's all gone to the dogs. There's nothing honorable left. Render to no man evil for evil. We got that down. We see the evil being done. But take thought for the things honorable in the sight of all men. What does that have to do? Evil? Well, they did me evil first, so I'm going to retaliate. Think about it first. In the verse where it says, render not to anyone evil for evil, but what do you take thought? Think. Take thought of the things that are honorable in the sight of all men. There's still something honorable among men and mankind. That when someone lies about you, you don't lie about them. That's taking thought for things honorable. When someone deserves to have that honking horn stuffed down their throat because they won't shut up on the horn when I can't get out of traffic, I need to go put that horn down their throat. When you think about that, said that wouldn't be good to do today. And it won't be because they may have a gun. It won't be honorable to do that. It's not honorable to retaliate with like kind. A lot of people won't think a word about it, and they won't have any shame. But a lot of people that are thinking, that just wasn't right to do. But they deserved it. Still wasn't honorable. And we're living honorable lives. We work with our hands in Ephesians 4:20 to that which is good, that we may share with those that don't have anything. People pay attention to that. It's a little thing we do. That's what we're supposed to do as Christians. And we might be working for others and under slavery in Ephesians 6, chapter 5 and 6. We're to do things for that master or our employer. We do it from the heart as we're serving the Lord. And we don't have to have somebody watching over us, not as eye pleasers, but doing the will of God from the heart and graciously doing so because we're wanting here to please God. So not retaliating, but even loving our enemies and doing good to them that persecute us. Back to Romans 12. If our enemy hungers, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him to drink. You're overcoming evil with good. A lot of times those actions of good will never come if you don't think first in the heat of battle. In the heat of battle, when you're ready to retaliate with like kind, you think, would that be the honorable thing to do? No, so you don't do it. And it will be a blessing, because most people say, I don't know how you didn't retaliate. Forbearance, self-control, those are virtuous, excellent things in your life. And when you can't have the job you want, when you're not making money to support your wife, when difficulties or your family difficulties like that, that's something you can do. You could be working on that character that will be a blessing to others. And finally, we all should be able to equip ourselves to share the gospel of hope and to think that immortality awaits us in heaven. Colossians 1:5-6, there was a people that had their faith and their love, and it's because they had the hope that is laid up for them in the heavens. Where have you heard before in the word of the truth of the gospel? That gospel message is a message of hope. It tells us what happens when we live our lives and there's great sorrow and persecution. We still have hope. It's how to live our lives when they've taken away all of my possessions. And it makes me sad, but they didn't take away my joy because they didn't take away my hope. I still have an abiding and a better treasure. Nobody could take that away from you. It's the good news of the gospel. We're being saved from our sins, made righteous before God. We're being sanctified from the world of sin. We're saints because of what Christ has done for us, and we're going to honor Him with every facet of our thinking and in our lives. And it is a life of hope that says I can look at my circumstances here and I can rejoice, not because of my calamity, because I am thankful I've got a better place to go. I will have a glorified body, not a hampered body. And I'll keep that on my mind. And you'll be a blessing to people around you. In 1 Peter, the first chapter, verses 3-4, he tells us the character of this. He tells us in terms that we can deal with because we live in areas, and he says, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. He really doesn't tell you what it is, but he helps us understand in our language what it is, in our circumstances. By His great mercy, verse 3, He beget us to a lively hope, and it's by the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, unto an inheritance incorruptible. That means it cannot deteriorate to a lesser state like my body, like my life, or whatever is deteriorating. He doesn't tell us what it is, He tells us what it's not. It's incorruptible. It can't lessen in its glory. It is undefiled. I know what defiled means. I know what that is. I see the dirt in the society. I can see the dirt in people's souls. It's undefiled. There's nothing to make it dirty again. There's nothing to get on your white robe as you're serving the Lord. And it fadeth not away. It fadeth not away. It doesn't lose its luster. It just doesn't fade away and crack up and you throw it in the garbage. It's lively hope. It will continue to do that. It's reserved in heaven for you. Me? Yeah. You? Yes. And nobody can take that away from you. And there's people in this world that need hope. They may not think about the character of hope that you're offering them. But it's a hope of heaven that gets that set and realize we're going to live eternity and that soul will never die. I'm going to a place I cannot die. Jesus said that. And when that message gets in the hearts of people, they can come along and they can get that right and they can start serving the Lord, living virtuous lives, realizing they're to be salt in their life. They'll live a productive life. But that doesn't start until they hear the gospel. And do you think they're going to get the message of the gospel, living the virtuous life commanded by God? God has been pushed out of our society. But what happens when you get things so dark? Some people are looking for light. That's what you and I have to do. Yes, we live in a corrupted society. But what should I do? Be salt, light, live excellent lives, realize there's still honor, and when they see the life of a Christian, that's an honorable man, that's an honorable woman. They did an honorable thing. And you're right there to extend that word. You're as lights in this world, holding forth the word of life without drudgery, without complaining, without murmuring, offering them the best message that one could ever hear, because it extends to eternity. It gives you the best of life is here, the character of it, that you can rejoice all through this life. But better yet, the one that is to come is going to be more glorious. That's what we offer people. And we don't sit around and say they're gone the dogs. There's no hope for them. Maybe that person right there in a dark society, and one of the worst examples of darkness, that's who the gospel's for. Let's just keep spreading that word, living that life, and we'll do what we can. Because our society is corrupt, but we've got a work to do, and we joyously go about glorifying the Lord with our lives that we live. If you haven't started that life, not a Christian yet, we offer you the gospel yet again. This may be the last opportunity that I have to give it to you and offer it to you. Maybe the last opportunity you have to respond to it. We don't know. But what we do know is that I don't care how vile a sinner I am, He can make me clean in the blood of Christ. And the fact that He has sent His Son, God sent His Son to die and to be raised from the dead, to give us that living hope, shows how much He cares about mankind. He still does. And if you know who Jesus is, you've grown up in the gospel and you've learned it, and you just haven't responded yet, think seriously about it. There's not a greater step that you can make than the one toward God through Jesus Christ. And we're here to help you. Come as we stand and as we sing.